If somebody drives into the back of you, it could just be down to bad luck, but your driving style greatly influences the chances of you being rear-ended. Learner drivers, for example, usually they are much more likely to have someone drive into the back of them. How do I know this? Well, I've been teaching people to drive for over 16 years. So in this video, I'm going to explain what increases your chances of someone driving into the back of you and what you can do to try to avoid it. One way you can increase your chances of being rear-ended is by staring right when you're approaching a junction, particularly a roundabout. You're staring right because you're trying to figure out whether or not it's safe to go, and you're not thinking about where you're going and whether or not you're stopping smoothly by the line. So here we are, I'm staring right at this roundabout thinking, can I go? Well, I'm not sure, well, I'll stop. And then they sort of suddenly stop at the line sharply. They look like they're going, their speed looks like they're going, but then they don't. And it's caused by the fact they are not focusing on whether or not they're stopping smoothly by the line, they're focusing on whether or not it's safe to go. I help my pupils with this problem by making them aware of the cause of the problem. Usually they are unaware of what's causing them to stop sharply by the line. Usually it's because their priority is whether or not it's safe to go. That's what their priority is when they are approaching a junction. Can I go or do I need to stop? Their priority isn't position and speed, therefore they lose their position and, well, they lose control of their speed, end up going in a bit fast and braking sharply, or sometimes end up slowing down too early. Once they are aware that they are putting too much priority into whether or not they are safe to go, and the fact that if they are not sure, not to stare at the car but to look forward, slow down and be ready to stop by the line. They can always stop by the line if they're not sure. Once they're aware of that, then they are more likely to focus on their position and speed as they approach the junction, and therefore have a safer position and speed, be less likely to brake hard, be less likely to stop unexpectedly too early, and therefore they are less likely to be rear-ended. Here are two other driving styles that can lead to a rear-end collision. I'm going to stop at this roundabout. Even if it's safe to go, I'll still stop just for this demonstration. There's no one behind me. Now what the driver will be doing is they'll be looking right, and when they see an opportunity to go, they'll start going, change their mind and suddenly stop. So they started to go and then suddenly stopped. Or they'll be staring right, they'll start going as they're staring right, look forwards, realise they can't go because the road is blocked, and then again suddenly stop. If you start to go at a junction and it looks like you're going to go and you suddenly change your mind and suddenly stop, it's not long before someone's going to drive into the back of you. I help my pupils with this by getting them to look at both things, not just who they need to give way to, but where are they going? Is it still clear? If I see my pupil staring right at a roundabout, I will be encouraging them to look ahead to make sure the road's not blocked, and I'll continue to encourage them to do this until they're doing it on their own. However, there is something else I need to help them with, because it's quite normal for a new driver to start going at a junction if they're not 100% sure. Let's say they see a car coming round a roundabout and they think, oh, that car looks like it's leaving the roundabout, it's not coming round towards us, we can go, but they're not 100% sure. They think it's quite likely what's going to happen, they're quite sure. Well, it's normal for a new driver to start going while still looking and then change their mind. They're willing to change their mind. And that's because it's normal human behaviour. If we're quite sure about something but not 100% sure, it's quite normal for us to do it anyway, because if we didn't, we wouldn't do much. So I try to explain that that's not what we do at junctions. That may be what you do in other parts of your life, but at a junction, until you are sure, until you can commit and no longer look right, the car stays stationary. And I explain why, because if you start and then stop, higher risk of being rear-ended. But also, we do get ready for maybes. So as it's a manual car and it takes a while to get the pedals and get going, if there's a car coming around the roundabout and they think, well, we might be able to go after that car, but not sure, get some gas, get near the clutch bite point. Don't move, just be ready to move. This helps them take opportunities. This helps them be prepared to go. You don't need to do this in an automatic, but it helps with a manual. But the car stays stationary until my pupil is confident that they no longer need to check to see if it's safe to go. They can just look where they're going and go. And here is something else you can do which can lead to you being rear-ended. In fact, this happened to me in November 2016 when I was teaching someone to drive. That's where this image is from. What they did, this very junction, I asked them to turn left at the end of the road, and they stopped a bit early. They didn't stop at the line. And then what they did, when they moved up to the line, they did it a bit too much like that, a bit too go, then stop. The car behind thought we were going, but we weren't, we were just getting closer to the line. So the car behind started looking right and then drove straight into the back of us. What my pupil needed to do was to move forward slowly and carefully up to the line. That comes down to control of the clutch, but also it might just be attitude. Maybe she was trying to get there quickly. I can't remember which one it was. It was a long time ago now, about 9 years ago. But this can also happen when you're trying to peep and creep at a junction. Video about that up there. But that's when you're trying to move forward slowly over the give way line to improve your view when it's hard to see. So I'm going to turn right at the end of this road and you can't see much. So I'm going to need to improve my view, which is known as peeping and creeping. I'm going to do it in a very careful, slow way so that it doesn't look like I'm going, it looks like I'm improving my view. There's a car on the left, that's why I stopped. They've actually stopped to let me out. I still can't see very much to the right, so I'm going to be very slow and careful. But you notice there, I moved forward slowly and carefully. I didn't jolt forward suddenly. What about missing an opportunity at a junction when you're not moving? So you're completely stationary at a junction, an opportunity comes, but you don't go, you miss it. However, you don't move at all, you stay completely stationary. Does that increase your chances of being rear-ended? Well, possibly, but in my over 16 years of teaching people to drive, no one has driven into the back of me in that scenario, and that is actually quite a common scenario for new learner drivers. They miss opportunities. It's normal. However, if my pupil was to stop sharply by the line or was to start going and then suddenly change their mind, that does lead to being rear-ended. That increases the chances significantly because you're taking the vehicle from behind by surprise. They think you're going, you've misled them. They may look right to see if they can go. Whilst they're starting to move, you stop, they don't see that you've stopped, and then they drive into the back of you. But if you stay completely stationary, well, they have very little reason to believe that you've started going. To reduce your chances of being rear-ended, when you approach a roundabout, it's important to be focusing ahead. Position, make sure you stay in your lane if there's more than one lane. Make sure you can stop by the line smoothly. That's your main focus. Your focus to the right to see whether or not it's safe to go, that should not be your priority. I'm not going now because there's an ambulance there. Even though they were stopped, they were making sure the car coming round was going to stop. But my attention when I approached this roundabout, this junction, was ahead. My position in my lane and making sure I can stop smoothly by the line. Now I'm waiting to go. I'm not going to start until I'm sure. When I'm sure, then I'll go. I'm not going to start because of maybe. I'll start when I know I can go. I'm not sure at the moment, so I'm waiting here. I'll think maybe after that car, maybe I'll get some gas, but I'm not going to actually move until I'm sure. So maybe someone's going to leave a gap for me to go through, like the bike maybe, or could I go around that silver car? It'd be a bit tight actually, I'm probably going to have to stop here. And this is what happens, the road gets blocked, the driver's looking right, they move forwards, look forwards, and suddenly realise, oh, I can't go anywhere. That's why it's so important to look both ways at junctions when you're waiting. Aha, here's my opportunity. The white car is going to leave. Now I can go when I'm certain. That took a while. Nothing I'm doing wrong. Sometimes it's just busy. What about you? How can you avoid driving into the back of somebody in front of you? I've done it myself. I was 19 years old. I was late for work. I was at a roundabout and the car in front of me started to move. I looked right and thought, you know what? I can make this as well if I get a move on. So I looked right, put my foot down and drove straight into the back of the car that was in front of me. They had stopped. They started to move and then stopped. But I wasn't aware of that. I actually hit them. I remember this. I hit them whilst I was still looking right. I learnt my lesson, but hopefully you can learn from me as well if you don't already know. Before you go at a junction, make sure you look forwards. Don't look right as you start moving, because you never know what's changed in front. Unfortunately, I have no photos of the incident because it's from a time when the device I had that had the photos on, when that broke, I lost the photos. Yes, I probably could have backed it up somehow, but it wasn't as simple back then. It was some old Nokia something phone. It wasn't a smartphone. But it was a silver Renault Espace, and I was driving a red Mark IV Vauxhall Astra. The back of her car was almost untouched. Just a scratch on the rear bumper, whereas the front of my car, the front usually being softer, well, needed a new front bumper, new crash beam, and the radiator had cracked and leaked the coolant all over the floor, so it needed a new radiator as well. Fortunately, no one was hurt. It was at a low speed. I didn't smash into the back of her at speed. I was stationary and then accelerated into her. So it was a low speed, but I was accelerating. I think she was a nurse, given how she was dressed and where she was travelling. I think she was going to work, but I was quite lucky because I could not have driven into the back of a nicer person. She remained calm throughout. That's something I really remember about it, and it's a long time ago now. When it comes to fault though, it was 100% my fault. Even though she started to go, which made me think, oh, I might be able to go as well. It's my responsibility to look forwards to make sure I don't drive into anything in front of me. It's also my responsibility to make sure I follow at a safe distance so that if the vehicle in front suddenly needs to brake, I have time to stop before I drive into the back of them. So if you brake sharply when you could have been braking gently, or you start to go then suddenly stop and you get rear-ended, then your driving style has probably contributed to the fact you've got rear-ended. But if you did neither of those things and you got rear-ended, well, it probably is just bad luck. If you found the video helpful, please give it a thumbs up. If you're looking for car insurance, check out the links to Collingwood and Confused in the description. If you're learning to drive and want to insure yourself on somebody else's car, then Collingwood are there for you, because you can do so without affecting the owner's policy, and that takes away a big stress from the owner of the car that you're using to practice your driving in. Via the link at the moment, there's up to 35% off and a £20 gift card. If you want to insure your own car, I recommend checking out the link to confused.com, because you fill out one quote form and get loads of quotes back from many insurers to compare who's cheapest. And you can change your car on that quote as many times as you like without having to do the whole quote again. You just change the car and recalculate. So it's a quick and easy way to compare how much it costs to insure different cars. Using the links doesn't cost you anything, but it does support the channel, so thank you very much. Subscribe to get my future videos. And until the next one, cheerio.